Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Show of hands if you can hear me. Show of hands in the back if you can hear me. Richard, if you can't hear me, raise your hand.
What?
Very good, thank you, sir. In a moment, I'm going to hand this over to Julie Kavanaugh, Chair of the Select Board. The board is here in force and in a public meeting. They have posted the meeting so that their comments will be reflected in the record, and it gives them the comfort that they can speak freely as we get into this discussion. Before we get there, however, it's my pleasure and privilege and responsibility as town administrator to welcome everybody this evening to our stakeholder meeting on the housing production plan for the town of Harwich. So thank you all assembled here for being here. This is a phenomenal turnout, and I know Christine Flynn, our Director of Planning and Community Development, and Karen Sonnenberg, our consultant, specifically for this, I think are overjoyed with the response, as am I. So thank you all for being here, and I think you all deserve a round of applause. So I was told that I have 3 jobs this evening. The first is to welcome you. The third, I should say, is to introduce the chair of the select board. And in between is to speak briefly. I always get a kick out of that one, but speaking briefly. I do want to speak for a moment as to what this gathering tonight means to me, not only as town administrator, but certainly as a resident here in the town of Harwich, and on something so critical as updating and rejuvenating our housing production plan. It is absolutely critical, and in some instances it is absolutely required and necessary. But we do this because we know we need to do this, and we need to continue moving forward on housing production here in Harwich. So to be a part of this is a great pleasure and privilege for me. Now I warned Karen, and I think I might have warned Christine slightly, that in my brief remarks before I introduce the chair of the board, I would like to put a challenge out there. And the challenge is to all of us here assembled tonight, and all of us as we go forward beyond this evening's event, and as we go forward on our housing production plan. And that is, as we talk about, rightfully so, the creation and preservation of affordable housing in Harwich, which of course we know is also the immediate charge of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We know it's the charge of the Housing Committee, and we know it's the mission of the Housing Authority. And today, the Greater General Court, their joint committee on municipalities, actually accepted written testimony on Article 46 that our own Ed McManus at town meeting had championed. You may recall that Article 46 at the annual town meeting petitions the Greater General Court of the Legislature to allow us to amend our bylaws to also include a definition on attainable housing. I think many of you here know that that is a goal of the administration up in Boston, but it's also a goal that we have here in Harwich, because affordable housing, as we understand capital H, is incredibly important. Attainable housing is also important. And so to have that discussion today, I thought was just a wonderful coincidence of timing, but really just ensuring that today is the first of many days where we talk about housing here in Harwich and how important it is. So the challenge I want to put out there is to just have everyone think for a moment tonight, and as you build a plan and going forward, to be mindful of other tools that are out there. Back in 2023, Governor Healy signed legislation that modified Chapter 40. Now, I think many of us here are aware of Chapter 40 because there's Chapter 40B. Well, now there's Chapter 40Y. And what that is a starter home zoning district. And so there's great material that I took the liberty of swiping from the Cape Cod Commission. They've got a great fact sheet on it, but it is simply that, it's just a fact. So the creation of the starter home zoning overlay district would be an amendment to our zoning bylaws. And so it's something that the select board and all the other relevant parties and all of us would need to dive into to assess. But the benefits of a starter home zoning overlay district are that it allows a municipality to identify areas of town where homes will be built that are affordable and that are for families. And so I'm going to read very quickly, if I could, from the overview provided by the Cape Cod Commission. Mass General Laws Chapter 40Y allows for the creation of starter home zoning overlay districts where a community determines they may be appropriate. Within the approved 40Y district, 10% of the units must be affordable to households earning 110% of area median income. The districts must be approved by the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, lovingly here and referred to as EOHLC, just rolls off the tongue. Upon finding that the district complies with all requirements of a 40Y district and any conditions set by EOHLC. Now, this was an outgrowth of Smart Growth, Chapter 40R. And when the legislature took the step of creating 40Y as its own self, similar to 40R districts, a one-time zoning incentive payment upon approval entitles a town to between $10,000 and $600,000 in state funding, plus an additional $3,000 for each home created in the starter home zoning district. As with any zoning bylaw, the starter home zoning district would have to be adopted by town meeting because it would be in fact a zoning bylaw. So as we get into specifically the housing production plan for Harwich, as we talk rightfully so on capital A, affordable, capital H, housing, as we know it, less than the 80% area median income, etc. And as we look at attainable housing, let's also be mindful of the starter home districts. Because I think many of us here this afternoon and this evening remember what a starter home was. For many of us, myself included, I would not have gained home ownership back in the day without the ability to gain a starter home. And so having that concept added to the mix, I think could be a game changer all around. None of these are exclusive, and none of these are meant to be combative. Rather, all of these, as you can see with the Governor's Affordable Home Act, tie into critical areas of attaining affordable and attainable housing for all. So that was me being brief. It would be my pleasure now to turn the microphone over to the Chair of the Select Board, Julie Kavanaugh, for Madam Chair to call the board meeting to order and to officially kick us off.
So good evening. I first want to call our meeting to order so we don't get any of us in trouble. So I would like to move to open the Select Board meeting with a joint effort with the local planning committee to order. Give me a second. Thank you. All in favor? Ron? Thank you. And I'm not, so 4-0. I would also just like to welcome you all here tonight, as Joe said, and I also will be brief. It's a summer night and it's not too cool in here. But I do want to first start off by thanking the local planning committee because, boy, you have all put in a lot of time and effort, and it's for the benefit of our entire town. So first of all, thank you to your group. I also want to go off of some of the items that Joe brought up, and I remember first sitting in this room way back, and Larry Valentine and I attending the housing committee through CDP, and what we learned in that meeting was amazing, but what we learned, what we didn't know, was even scarier. So tonight, when we talk about the housing production plan and to try to figure out what's best for Harwich, we once again find ourselves in a situation where what fits in parts of Massachusetts doesn't always fit for us. So the efforts that you put into looking at our community as a unique place to live is greatly appreciated by this board and by the members of the community. So I look forward to the discussion that we're going to have tonight. Thank you. And now, what about the local planning committee in terms of calling your meeting to order?
Hello everyone, I'm Joyce McIntyre, I'm the chair of the local planning committee. Thank you all for being here. So I forward to the opportunity really to bring the stakeholders all in one room. Everyone in Harwich has been working very hard on this, and it's a unique opportunity to be together. Karen Sunenberg is our delightful and extremely knowledgeable consultant for the housing production plan. She's going to give you a full presentation about all the data that she asked, and this is very wise that we go through and just briefly introduce ourselves, since this is really a stakeholders meeting. So we can be really brief. I introduced myself, I introduced you, Karen.
Stand up, please, when you can, so we can see you.
Hi, Richard. Jeff Hanlon. I'm on the select board.
Julie Kavanaugh, select board.
Ed McManus, local planning committee.
Brian Sullivan, Board of Appeals. Linda Donahue, Board of Appeals. Don Cowell, Select Board President of PESH.
Elizabeth Harder, Barnstable County Assembly Delegates, Harwich Housing Authority, Harwich Housing Committee.
All right, being a little louder, 'cause I'm having a hard time.
Really loud.
Yeah.
Bob Doan, with the Midcape Church Homes and the Pine Knoll Buildings.
Mark Bowden, Howard Housing Authority, and Howard Housing Committee.
Al Eaton, Pine Oaks Village.
Duncan Berry, Chair, Planning Board.
Jay Johnson, Health Department. Jim Krieger, Board of Health.
Mondo Gallo, Board of Health. Gregory Winston, Pine Oaks Village.
Ellis Hepku, Community Development Partnership. Amanda Beveridge, also the Community Development Partnership. Emily Green, from the Planning Board.
Karen Associate, member of the planning board, also member of the community preservation committee and historic commission.
Mary Jones, Local Planning Committee. Brenda Restack, Local Planning Committee. Sharon Ruby, Time Long,
David Space, Local Planning Committee.
Garrison, Select Board.
Christine Lynn, Director of Planning and Community Development.
Anyone in the back that want to holler?
Kim Borja, Harwich Housing Authority and Executive Director of PESH.
Richard Waystack, Board of Assessors and Housing Consultants.
Marcia Vigneault, Property Manager at Hatch and Housing Authority Board and CPC.
Mark Kelleher, Justice Spectator, thank you.
I'm John Carey. I'm restoring the West Harwich School, and I'm building 10 units of housing that will be done in 8 months.
Ed wants to say something about the fans. Is that what you're saying?
You need to call us over to
Oh, then we'll, thank you, because we posted too, the local planning committee. Thank you, Ed. Posted an agenda calling that meeting to order. This was also posted. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you Ed, for keeping us on. So just very briefly, where we are in this whole process. So the local comprehensive plan, the board select board convened the local planning committee almost 2 years ago. But at this part of that, a critical juncture of that plan is the housing production plan. And then tonight, that's what the focus is here. A year ago, your committee, the local planning committee, asked all of Harwich, tell us in a very specific way collected data. Housing was a specific question about that. We got over 1,000 responses. You can look at that data, it is public. Our community really understands the complexity of this problem. They've reported over and over again that what we value as a community is our people, as well as our environment. And people need to be able to live here. And our community character is unique, and forces in housing that are threatening that community character, all of which you know. There's a lot of subtle responses to that. The housing production plan that Karen's going to take us through tonight is a draft. That draft, we all have reviewed the same draft. If you want to Google it, it's on the website, the town website, if you want to scroll through it at the time. Kind of general, very brief structural issues. The executive summary is what most people are going to read. We have provided a lot of feedback to Karen about that we're really at a critical juncture for our people. There are very good jobs available in our community. If there's a mismatch between those jobs that we want to fill, that sustain our community, and then people being able to live in our town. And those things, and this is not news to who's in this room, but our superintendent of Monmouth Schools talks about not being able to hire teachers who can live here. The select board is talk about repeatedly firefighters, police paying overtime. These are core members of our community that we all benefit from living here, and that is increasingly unattained. So in this graph, we really provided to Karen to try to move a lot of that people information up, because this is what people are going to read, right? And the work of this is to preserve our community character, and the recommendations that Joe started to reference are really to support long-term year-round housing. Karen's going to take us through some of the specifics of that. It's a very time-oriented chart, what are kind of what we thought of as the highest priority. But a lot of experts in the room, so that's the point of this meeting, is to try and get that feedback and back and forth as, what fits for Harwich. But timeliness of it is of the essence. The second part, Karen, you are like a ninja about this. The data is profound, right? And the point of that second part of this 80-plus page document is to provide the data perpetuity really for the next 10 years as you all are digging into this problem. What is the best set of information that we have about this? So not only does the plan offer some solutions, but more solutions can come from the data gathering effort. With that, I will stop. That was the general idea. Sharon Rooney is our invaluable consultant for the plan overall. Sharon, do you want to give us just very briefly? And we'll get in. The other thing Karen asked me to make sure you sign in, because that's really important. And when Karen's up, she's going to give us it all in a big plan, and we're going to hold our questions to you, being mindful of some of it.
Thank you, and thanks everyone. Just to let you know that the housing production plan is on a timeline to be completed by the end of summer. Final draft form. This is important input to that process. It goes through its own approval process through the town and then gets submitted to the state. Meanwhile, we are working on and helping the LCPC with the overall local comprehensive plan document. That is on a similar time frame for, a little bit longer time frame. We hope to have a final draft ready by the end of the calendar year with anticipation of hopefully adoption at spring town meeting. The other component of the other plan that we're also working on at the same time is the update to the open space and recreation plan. So there are 3 plans into one that will all be reflected in the overall LCP, hopefully for spring town meeting. Thank you.
You have to speak right into that microphone, please. Speak right to the microphone.
I know, he's trying to put it in here, so I wasn't trying to balance it the whole time, but I will keep it in my hands.
Right.
This housing production plan is an updated plans that we actually did in 2010 and 2016. A lot of things have changed since 2016, as you all understand and experience. This plan, besides being a part of the local comprehensive plan, also embraces the action plan that the Housing Trust put together recently. So there's a lot of planning going on, and the real important piece will be implementation. And that's why we have you folks here tonight, because you all have the potential for being the implementers. And so with that, I am going to just move along with this as quickly as possible, because the most important part of this evening thing is to hear from you. Christine, next slide. The first part of the housing production plan is required by the state. It's called the Housing Needs Assessment. And it looks at demographic, economic, housing characteristics and trends, and tries to distill that information into priority housing needs. And this slide just represents some key takeaways from this housing needs assessment. Harwich is still growing. Between 2010 and 2021, more than 1,000 new residents came into the community, to a total of 13,329 residents. That represents a growth rate of 7.6%, which is comparable to the statewide growth rate. Population projections indicate indicate that the population remain stable for the next few years, and then after 2030, it will start to decline. You know, population projections are very dicey in retirement communities and seasonal communities, but that's what we have to go by. By 2040, they said the population will be 12,500 to 549. We'll see. Nothing new for you folks. Losing younger residents and gaining older ones. Baby boomer were a major contribution to that retirement community. But just to show you, in the context of population growth of 7.6%, those under 18 decreased by 27%, and those 65 years and older increased by 27% as well, and is projected to go to 42% by 2030. Rising incomes, with a median household income, this is based on 2021 census estimates of $79,641. Just to give you some kind of comparison, the median for the county was $91,488. Another point of the comparison is that 80% of area median household income, which is a limit that we use a lot for affordable housing, was higher. In 2021, it was 82,850. It's gone up to over 88,000 based on 2024 income limits. 57% of households earn more than $100,000 who are able to afford high housing prices in the community, and that's up from 22% in 2010. So there's a very vulnerable population in the community. Just looking at income, 12% of all households earn less than $25,000, and that was equivalent of 690 households, while the number of units that included the subsidized housing inventory, including those affordable units that are defined by the state, 328. The average weekly wage for people who actually work in the community was $58,000, was $1,116. And if you take that times, 52, you get to an annual income of $58,000. So compare that to the median household income of residents, and you can understand why a lot of people who have jobs in the community can't afford to live here. Also, 13.5% of residents claim some type of disability, which is high. The county-wide level is higher, more than 15%. Statewide, it's 11.7%. And clearly, it's correlated to an aging population. So, housing. Just to give you kind of like scattershot housing data. 61% of housing stock predates 1980. Likely, a lot of units have aging systems, structural needs, potential lead-based paint, hazards that are a problem for young children, and there's been limited production since 2010. Only 232 units during that period. And at the same time, there's a significant amount of teardown activity. The building department has studied there between a third or one-half of all new housing starts involve demolition and replacement activity. Also, some concern is that there's been a loss of year-round rental units since 2010, going from 1,110 units to 826, for almost 20% of the housing stock to 14.4%. Owner occupancy has increased, 86% in 2021, 80% in 2010. There's not a lot of housing diversity with regard to types of housing. 89% of units are in single-family detached dwellings. 4% of all units are in multifamily properties of 5 or more units. Of the 6,000 581 year-round housing units counted per the 2020 decennial census. 328, or almost 5%, are included in the subsidized housing inventory. They meet all the requirements of affordability that's defined by the state. And of those units, 80% are rentals. The 6,581 figure is computed by looking at the total number of housing units in the community and subtracting out the second home seasonal units. And that figure is going to stay as the denominator calculating that affordability percentage and housing production goals until the 2030 census figures are released. The annual housing production goal is 32 units, which is the equivalent of 0.5% of the year-round housing figure. If the town can document the production of 33 units in any particular year, it gets what's called certified by the state. Sometimes it's referred to as safe harbor, which means that the town will have the ability to potentially deny Chapter 40B comprehensive permit applications that it deems to do not address local housing needs and are inappropriate for the community. They'll be able to deny that for 1 year. If they can document that they produced 1% of the year-round housing stock or 66 units, there's a 2-year safe harbor. And I have to say, with the coming of 2 particular projects, one that's being guided by the Housing Trust, which is 456 Queen Anne Road, as well as another potential rental development that's being reviewed now as part of Pineo's Village 4. There is the potential of being certified during the next several years. Let me just mention this chart. The columns on the right are the seasonal or occasional units, compared to the columns on the left, which are the total number of units, going from 1980 census all the way to 2021 census estimates. And basically, the seasonal occasional units were 37% in 1980. They increased to over 40%, 40.5% in 2010. They went down in 2020 because of the pandemic. As you recall, people moving for a safer refuge from COVID to the Cape. And then it's 37.4%, and now as of 2021, 41.7%. Okay. Just quickly, I should say, besides the housing market rebounding, we can say the housing market has boomed in the last few years. As simple economics 101. Demand outstrips supply, and what happens? Prices go up. While the median household income increased by 92% between 2020 and 2021, the median single-family home price increased by 195%. Double. And there you got the widening affordability gaps right there, the mismatch between jobs and housing prices that Joyce mentioned clearly. The median single-family house price was $650,000 as of August 23. It went up to $670,000 for the end of 2023. And the $650,000 requires an income of about $160,200. And that's assuming that the household's not spending more than 30% of their income in housing costs, which is a traditional kind of perspective on housing affordability that's been embraced by the federal government and the state government. It leads a gap of, we're getting, close to $330,000, which is the difference between the median single-family home and what a median earning household can afford, about $320,000. Market rents are also very high, if you can find one. So we're talking about rents, very few listings. In the past, I have been able to go to the internet and go to realtors and get a whole list of winter rentals, required income of $106,000 to begin with, and 30% affordability threshold and throwing in some monthly utility costs. And then besides affordability, we're talking about high cost burdens, where people are spending too much on their housing. About 1/3 of households have cost burdens. They were spending more than 30% of their income on housing costs. 14% had severe cost burdens, so they were spending more than half their income on housing. And if you look at households that are earning at or below 80% of area median income, that includes 2,249 households, and of those, 63% had cost burdens, and almost a third had severe cost burdens. There are people in this community, and we all are aware of it, who are really struggling to afford to stay in the community. So we do this kind of in a more detailed way in the draft, but just looking at active information, we come up with some priority housing needs, with a continued focus on year-round rental housing. You know, being able to get to some of the more vulnerable residents in the community, to help diversify the housing stock, make up for some of the loss of rentals. Almost all state subsidies so far, we're hoping with the Affordable Home Act will get more resources, but almost all state and federal resources are for rental housing. So you can build it a higher scale and better leverage limited local resources. Huge ways for subsidized housing. But we also know, based on what we've heard, based on, you know, where's starter housing in the community anymore? We need to include some first-time home ownership in the housing agenda over the next few years. Starter housing, as well as some options for empty nesters. We have to develop both affordable and attainable units. Affordable units we are defining in this document as those that are eligible for inclusion in SHI up to 80% of area median income, and attainable units are up to 120% of area median income. But the local planning committee was also very clear that they thought, because of the rising housing prices, that we should even look beyond that for some units. And clearly, a mix of incomes and developments are something that the town really has to focus on. Because of the relatively high level of those who claim disability and aging population, we think it's important to make sure that greater handicap accessibility and some on-site services can be integrated into new development or redevelopment. And because of the numbers of units that are aging, I think it's also necessary to support home improvements for qualifying owners. So we're going to move on to the actual strategies. The first category I call capacity building, but the local planning committee, I think rightly so, thinks that maybe in better terms where it's governance. We're talking about the structure of the community to better promote housing diversity and affordability to address local needs. Number one is, a transparent and robust community outreach process on any kind of affordable housing initiative. As someone from the local planning community said, and process need to put a face on who's going to benefit from affordable housing. To capitalize the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust, so it has the resources to be able to implement parts of this plan in their action plan. Certainly continue funding the Community Preservation Committee. Potential inclusionary zoning bylaw that would include ability for donors to actually pay instead of being tax, the short-term rental tax, that is in a separate fund. There might be some discussion whether that funding might be actually folded into the housing trust. Is that efficient use? That fund will have less kind of constraints on eligible activities than actual CPC money or other trust funds. Because that would be a very important resource. And, you know, with holding out that there might be some ability to, for the town to be able to have a transfer tax on luxury home sales. And it has looked really good on this statewide affordable home act recently, you know, but a home petition might make sense if it doesn't come through the state legislature. And to better define local housing responsibilities, I gotta say that I was working on this plan. I had a hard time figuring out, you know, housing committee's specific roles and responsibilities versus the housing trust. And if you look at the draft, when it comes down to each strategy to try to define the priority as well as who's responsible, and I had a hard time articulating whether it was the housing committee or the housing trust. I think clearly in order to have accountability, those goals need to be better defined and potentially consider merging the two organizations at some point in the future. On to regulation, very important tools to help guide development. And in doing these and putting together a package of strategies, besides all the input that we receive through the planning process, there we certainly wanted to focus on where we can increase density in appropriate locations, incorporate mandates and incentives for including affordable housing, and also to make sure that we have guidelines for developers on what the town's preferences are for various locations, housing types, needs, etc. The first one has been in previous plans as well, which is to integrate affordable housing in the open space residential design bylaw cost development, which it actually has been used a number of times in the community. It is very smart growth by cluster development while preserving open space. Bylaw does not have any inclusion of affordable housing mandates or incentives such as density bonuses, as well as it only allows single-family homes instead of other housing types, potentially could be useful. So we recommend that it be considered. Adopt inclusionary zoning, which means that any development over a certain size, a certain percentage of the units would have to be affordable and eligible for inclusion in the subsidized housing inventory. Eastham just passed a bylaw that's worth looking at it. They have mandates for including affordable and attainable units. And so that's something that really might be worthwhile to review. Also density bonuses and ability for developers to pay cash instead of using actual development. You always want the units if you can, but sometimes it doesn't make as much sense when you have the payments that we've been using in other projects has been just is coming to make sense. Good to have that flexibility. Remember, better promote mixed-use development, and the local planning committee suggested we change that to better promote village development. And we certainly, in the draft plan, suggest that appropriate locations for mixed uses for higher density are in the village areas. There already is a overlay district in Harwich Port and Harwich Center. They're basically pretty much the same. Question is, you know, we want Onyx to expand such zoning, maybe tweaking it a bit for the other village areas as well. Consider short-term rental regulations. We heard a lot from in the planning process, as community rentals, driving up prices, eroding availability of housing, and we include model of regulations that have been passed in other communities. One example is Great Barrington. And actually, some of these Berkshire towns are a lot like Cape towns in some sort of the water, they have mountains, but basically it's a lot of the same kind of economic and housing dynamic. Update local LIV regulations and procedures. LIV is local initiative program. It's a state program. It's often referred to as the Friendly 40B program, which means that in order for a developer to submit a comprehensive permit application to the zoning board of appeals, the town, select board, and developer have to reach agreement on the basic terms and conditions of the project, whereby the town agrees that this project serves pressing local needs and is one that would be helpful to the community, and then they apply jointly to the state to get it going and to submit the comprehensive permit to the ZBA. If you get certification under this housing reduction plan, if you meet that 33 unit reduction goal, you have to, the builders have to go through this. They can't, they have to, town has to agree on the terms and conditions before they can submit anything to the ZBA. Another thing that we're concerned about is seasonal workers, housing, and this is an issue across the Cape. Some progress has been made, and we're going to need to kind of better focus on that in the draft. And then another suggestion was to consider adapting Dennis's municipally sponsored housing project bylaw, which basically is kind of a local LIP process, where the select board, it determines that the project addresses their key preferences and priorities, and shoot the project down the planning board and say, you can waive some of your requirements in order to permit the project. To touch base on the small home bylaw, there was such a thing under 40R, under smart code, it's a component of chapter 40R, and there were no takers across the state. And so when I talked to the state about this, they said they were in the process of really revisiting the bylaw, and that they would be doing it. So it is great to hear that they actually did that. I'm going to be very anxious to see what they put together and will insert it into the draft plan. Production, which is the most important thing, really, about the production plan of actual development opportunities. And I mentioned the Housing Trust owns 456 Queen Anne Road and issued an RFP. Is there anybody from the Housing Trust here? Oh, you can update us on that, because I understand the responses were due on June 5th, so I'm very anxious to hear what you received. We'll get to that. But that's a potentially very meaningful project that involves multiple income tiers, rental housing, on town property, and very, very important. And with this, the town has ownership, the town controls what's going to be built on the site. And it reflects their preferences and priorities and terms and a request for proposal process. With a larger project, multiple areas make sense. This project, they're talking about incomes between 30 to 100% of AMI. If it's a town property, it can only fit one or several units, then there's a decision to be affordable, to be attainable, what's the feasibility on the project, and typically, smaller developments, smaller scales, that fewer economics, economies of scale, so those all have to be looked at on a site-by-site basis. And clearly, in order to make this plan work, you have to partner with developers. On town-owned property, the RFP is select a qualified developer with the best proposal. On private property, applicants come forward with a proposal, and it's a matter of working to see if you can figure out a way to make the project really work for the town. And once again, the local initiative program, the Friendly 40B process can be a really good tool for permitting these projects. And I know that the town's in the process of reviewing a fourth phase of Pine Lakes Village, or that itself involves a few phases, and also is meant to cover a range of income levels, rentals as well. Almost done. So we're looking at strategies that are directed to actually preserving and making the greatest use of the existing housing stock. One here is just to make sure that the existing units that are included as part of the SHI remain as part of the SHI. There are numbers of projects on the SHI that are referred to as expiring use projects because their affordability restrictions are projected to end within the next decade, several decades. And the town needs to really be focused on making sure that those units are maintained as part of the town's affordable inventory for as long a period as possible. And local planning committee suggested, I think rightly, that we move this particular strategy to the governance section, that first one from accessibility. And this does take, some oversight to make sure that all units that are part of the affordable housing development get included in this SHI and stay on the SHI. Establish housing preservation initiatives in order to improve the existing housing stock. And there are suggestions of various types of programs that the town might consider. It also, strategy includes some existing state programs that are targeted to housing preservation improvement efforts for reference. It should be mentioned that CPC money cannot be used for housing improvement and preservation unless the particular property was acquired or built seeking money. So other resources need to be pulled in. But Harwich has some of these resources and have been a pioneer in finding them. At least this is from proceeds from the cell tower is a good example. The town sold the property back when it came in at more than $1 million. And then this Affordable Housing Stabilization Fund is another possibility. Just for your information. And expand that rental assistance program. The Housing Authority has been managing this particular project that provides $350 in subsidy per month to renters, qualifying renters who participate in the program. The issue has come up that we need to look at maybe expanding this program because it serves such a need and stabilize existing renters in the community. And so there's been discussions about maybe the town assuming more responsibility, actually having an entity manage it. But it's in discussion right now to potentially increase. Hold on one second. Just to end, next step, so here we are, stakeholders forum. We're going to take comments based on the comments I've received from the local planning committee and others, and revise a draft. And then both the planning board and the select board have to approve the plan before it can be submitted to the state for their review. One of those meetings, some meeting has to include a ability for those residents to come and learn about the plan and have input too. So that all needs to be determined. And with that, I will end my presentation. Thank you all for your patience and yes, you were.
I had a question on expanding the rental vouchers, and I don't know what you mean by that, because there are vouchers available. There are just no units for the vouchers to be used on. So what do you mean by expanding?
Well, there's a difference between Section 8 housing choice vouchers that are being administered through federal money that goes to the state and then goes to the housing authority or other housing assistance corporation. This rental assistance program was meant to mimic that program with local CPC money, so that up to $350 in rental assistance goes directly to the landlord to help defray some of the rental costs for folks who really need that support. It's meant to be a short-term basis, like a 3-year basis, and the concern has been that these households all could really use case management, help stabilize them. So an idea is to really formalize case management with the actual subsidy. Yeah.
So I have a follow-up to Richard's question. So, I don't need my phone, I think everybody can hear me. You can, I'm not loud.
I thought I was for the voice
For the recordings.
Why do you?
Yeah, if you can, just give them the mic, yeah.
So I had a follow-up to Richard's question on the rental assistance program. We at CPC have, the Affordable Housing Trust has come to us from time to time to request funds. The last couple of years, they haven't come to us. And the issue has been, there were no units or there were no people in order for them to place in those units. So the question we had asked was, what's the problem with it? Can the 3-year voucher be increased? Is it because they need more money? Is it because they need more units? And I don't recall having gotten a real answer at our CPC meetings on that. And at one point, we were told that Affordable Housing Trust, the Housing Authority, was running the program on behalf of the select board, and I don't know what it really is at this point. So I guess that's my follow-up to Richard's question.
That's rental assistance program that goes back many years with the housing authority managed. They actually manage a number of programs.
Yeah, I can explain, I can answer the question.
Excellent.
Hi, Elizabeth Harder. The answer is there are two different things when you say rental assistance.
I wasn't
The housing authority gives the $300 to help people with rent.
Yep.
That's through the select board. That was their ask to the housing authority. The housing authority does that, but it doesn't give any services, which people really need. So the Affordable Housing Trust wanted to start a rental assistance program the way they should be done, either through HAC or home HBC, CDP, whatever. You don't do it, but HBC, too many acronyms. So that's what they went to ask the CPC for money this year in order to get an RFP, put together an RFP for that, and set up a rental assistance program through whoever they chose through RFP. But the CPC just kept asking for more. You wanted to know how much money it was going to cost, but they couldn't till they put out an RFP.
So to that point, I think the timing perhaps wasn't great with some of us because there wasn't a lot of information that came before us on CPC at the time. And I'll be honest with you, I thought we needed more information, and I always support the housing projects. So as a follow-up to that though, what is that intended to take over what Housing Authority currently has and move that into a program that is currently run by the Affordable Housing Trust, or that will be run by the Affordable Housing Trust, and have management and everything on top of it. So that's,
The Affordable Housing Trust will not be running
yeah.
the assistance, they will hire someone to run it.
So take over what's already existing, because there are still funds
The
there.
Housing Authority, if the Affordable Housing Trust is able to set up a rental assistance program hosted by one of the many organizations that does so, then the Housing Authority, then we have discussed at the Housing Authority that we will continue to fulfill the obligations for the people we already have that are already getting the money from us up to the end of their 3 years, and then any money that's left over will go to the trust towards that rental assistance program, because, I mean, we could keep it, but as I said, the Housing Authority does not provide any services. So it's better to put the money towards a rental assistance program than it does.
I'm not sure about the way the funds get charged, but I understand the point.
Yeah. I'm just gonna clear.
Thank you. So I'm on select board through the trust, and there was a conversation based on the CPC discussion of going to CPC without, as CPC gave that feedback, not enough information. So the trust voted to move forward with a rental assistance program and getting more information together to then come back to CPC. And you're right, the discussion was had that, we're talking about a stipend which is completely separate from the Housing Authority. I'm familiar with the Housing Authority stipends, they're usually 3-year, up to a certain amount. The trust was looking to develop a different program that would allow higher rents, because rents are really unreasonable, and possibly even up to say $400, maybe even $500 stipend, depending on. And the question was then vetting those applications, because they would be separate. We would look to the Board of Assessors, who have an amazing system of vetting in terms of applications and income based on what they do already for taxpayers. And so you'll be getting more information on that. I believe Brianna's also hoping to work further on that. I will say that we just took that vote. I think it was only about a month and a half ago. But that question came up with, a 3-bedroom house is, somewhere in the vicinity, if there isn't even one around, $3,500 to maybe $4,000. I mean, it's outrageous that those are the numbers, but those are the numbers. So they are working on that. And I think it's important to note that, there's been many different initiatives brought forward, as Town Administrator Joe Powers has alluded to. We try to be creative with zoning. We passed the ADU zoning bylaw. We changed that. And that was a struggle to communicate that well, but we changed it so that even if you had a non-conforming property, but you were going to maintain the existing setbacks or not, cause any kind of problem with setbacks, that you would even be able to create an ADU so that you create a different type of housing. Board of Assessors, Richard Waystek and his group have come to the select board to talk about another initiative in terms of giving a tax credit for creating year-round housing. We're going to start working on that article already to get that moving. So we are trying to work with Christine's been amazing. We have zoning bylaws for that, but all of this input is so helpful because there's different creative ways we can be looking at helping people incentivize creating year-round housing.
Historically, the town has had a rental assistance program for a very long time, and the distinguishing characteristics of it from the voucher program that was run through HUD is you get a voucher and then you have to go out and find the unit. When we first started the rental assistance program, there was people who were in housing that were about to lose it and needed some subsidy to stay in their housing. And then came the year when we lost our needs, because for many people, it's a three-legged stool. You need childcare, you need employment, and you need housing. If one of the legs gets kicked out, the family collapses. So we've done a lot of different things with that, but it's been a very successful program. But it has never been one where we grant you a subsidy and then you have to go out and find a unit. It was always intended that, like the homeless prevention council, aimed at keeping people in the house that they have now.
To elaborate on what Karen started to reference based on our work and what, Harwich has told us, there is an appetite for, and the complexity of this is not lost on us, but conceptually the idea of, at our village centers, properties that are perhaps underused, or how do you want to talk about this, or opportunity for mixed development. There's a real sense of an appetite for creating housing options in those centers. The tension that we've continually, and that's hard, I know, right? It's like really hard, contextually have come back to the tension is how fragile our environment is as well. So, none of this is news to this group, but just to build on what Karen was saying, we're really hearing from the community of in our village centers and the schoolhouses, really saying, people notice, hey, there's an empty building, what can we do with this?
Nobody I know is supporting it. Everyone is against anything.
I agree. I mean, the practice of actually making it happen, but conceptually,
The Patels have less than.
I have to say I disagree, because in historic, the Patels, when they were renovating their buildings, they wanted to put in units above their buildings, and we were thrilled to be able to approve that. So I do think
They've done it.
they have done it, and it's fantastic. So I do think the appetite is there, and that is the right location. It's someplace where it's walkable to restaurants, it's walkable to a convenience store. It ticks off all the boxes. Unfortunately, it's only a couple of units. I wish they could have done it on all of the buildings that they own in the area. But I do think there is an appetite for rentals in general for our younger population. I think that's part of the reason that we're losing them, is because the younger generation wants to travel and they don't want to own a house. Whereas my generation, we were taught, success through home ownership. So it's a different twist to have to deal with. So I'm not saying the rental assistance programs aren't needed, they are. I lived in freely, I was on CPC for 3 years before the housing authority came to us to seek more money for that rental assistance program. And it surprised me at the time that I didn't know it existed, that I didn't know that it was being managed by the housing authority, and that they didn't need money every year. And I understand that the way they manage it is based on a 3-year commitment. But it's disheartening to know that program is kind of stagnated for a couple of years now because of the lack of being able to use the money that you already have. And because that's what we were told the last time. I was at a meeting when we talked about it, so. Yeah.
Yes. Try to follow the hands as they are released.
I'm just going to put my provider hat on for a second, and I think I believe I talked for all the providers in here. You can't conflate the whole discussion into one box, because it isn't. There are owner-occupied rentals, there's owner-occupied flat-out ownership. But the things that the providers do with rental buyouts and stuff, I hope everybody can understand this when they're making this plan up. It's not a simple pass-through. I get $1 million and you send $1 million out to people. It costs money to have those operations run. I know we were in a preschool, so when the voucher system happened, it actually allows us to continue to pay teachers in the facility itself. If you're going to be doing this CDP or HESH provider operated system has to account for the fact that there's got to be some money in it to be able to operate.
Fully understand that.
No, I get that, but we're starting to talk about, other things in that discussion. This is a discrete thing, and this has to do with most of the larger numbers. We're not going to hit on the shyness of 10% just by having an owner in the middle of town provide 4 affordable housing units. That isn't going to make a paradigm shift. The providers are. The providers are in a position to either manage the property or to manage assistance. It's going to have some overhead implications.
Who's next? Sure, and then gentlemen, yes, in green after that, promise.
Hi, thank you. My name is Allison Hu. I'm a community organizer with CVP, and I'd like to pipe up as a under 30 person living on Cape Cod. I wanted to, if we're okay with shifting the subject a little bit, starter homes are a really nice idea, but it kind of perpetuates the development of single-family homes on quarter or half-acre lots. I don't, if I ever own a home, I expect it to be the only home I own. The concept of starting with one home and moving to another is not something that my generation discusses or even thinks about, given the, how salaries climb relatively to inflation and so on and so forth. That's not something that is happening for myself. And then a statistic I saw cited this afternoon was the cost of a 2-bedroom apartment. I need a 1-bedroom apartment. I have a 2-bedroom apartment and can't find a reliable stranger who I feel safe living with. 1-bedroom apartments are really important for young single people. This is that age gap when you lose Cape Codders, right? Between 18 and 30. I'm not married, I'm not having children, I'm not ready to buy a home, I don't need a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom, I need a 1-bedroom. So there might not be many of us left because we don't have the option to stay. Most of my peers live with their parents or their grandparents, but I like to think that if we build it, they will come. Or they will stay, or they will move out of mom's basement. So, thank you.
Karen and Joyce, I'd like you to add to your production plan what the chair of the select board mentioned. We got an approval last week from the select board to create an affordable housing property tax credit.
Oh, yeah.
Where an owner, it was just the Department of Revenue allowed us to start doing it this year. And it would be great if it's in the plan because we'll be before town meeting whenever the town administrator creates one, whether it's this fall or next spring. But that homeowners can create housing, we will vet to the Board of Assessors, and those homeowners, in addition to their rent, can qualify for $1,000 or $1,500 tax credit. And it will allow people, it's an incentive for people to create it, because we have frankly so many seniors that are overhoused, living in large properties where they can rent. And this young lady, by the way, Howard's just going to have 3 1-bedroom units on Bank Street at the old firehouse. So, great time. But also, I just want to say, I would love to hear tonight, because we have a developer in the room who's doing a private-public partnership that basically he bought an older structure. And he's trying to provide, and correct me if I'm wrong, 3 out of 10 units affordable. And my understanding is if those 3 units are affordable, all 10 of the units get put on the shy list. And I'd love to hear from him because he's doing it. His guys were on site today. He's restoring an old building and providing 10 units of housing. And I'd love to hear how he's doing it because that would be beneficial to your production.
That would be great. And Penny, can you send me information on that program?
Be happy.
Town has had a similar program for years, so that's great news.
Mr. Carey. John.
On my way. There you go. Thank you.
Hello. My name is John Carey. I'm 35. I live on Cape Cod. My family's been here for 50-something years. I left Boston. I was working for builders there. I came here in because of the housing situation. I love Harwich, I always have. And so I was able to buy the old West Harwich schoolhouse from the select board in the town, and they asked for housing, they asked for 3 to 5. The numbers don't work, 3 to 5, you gotta do more. So we went to 7, and we had more capacity, so we ended up doing 10. And so we got unanimous approval from all the different committees. The select board was right there, the planning board was fabulous, the historic worked with us, even though they cost us a bit of money. And then zoning board of appeals, so we went through everyone. Everyone supported it, but there was, the amount of hurdles it took to get over through the process was over a year for me. It was over $100,000 in my pocket. I don't have any money for my family, so it's all just money that I either make or borrow or something. So then we got the approvals for 10 units, and it took me a year to get financing from a private lender. Banks wouldn't touch it. And they said, you don't have enough experience, blah, blah, blah. And so we ended up getting $1.4 million to renovate the first structure. So it ends up being about $250,000 to $300,000 per unit, and the town sold me land almost as cheap as you can sell it, and they gave me a building. So that's already a subsidized product. So $300,000 per unit is what it's costing me, and that's about as cheap as you can build this stuff. So once we went through the year-long process of getting entitlements, it took me a year to get funding. I'm paying 9%, 9.5% interest on this loan. So $1.4 million. In 12 months, I'll be paying $140,000 a year to own these 7 units. And I still got to build 3 more. So it's just very, very expensive. And so the way it works for me is I've spent all my money buying the property. I borrowed all the money to build this. And so whatever I end up borrowing to build this, $1.4 million for 7 units, I basically break that down, and then that's where the rents land. Because I'm not a nonprofit, I have to make a little money on this. If I can make $75,000 a year on this, that's a 5% return on all the money I borrow. That's not a good investment. Nobody would do that. That's why nobody's doing this. So if I do all this and I don't get sued or somebody gets hurt or something, we get it done and built, and then I operate it, it's just not a great play. So we get all the way down this road, and now our biggest problem is I need water for the site. So complicated. I go to the water department, they tell me I have to do this, and that's another $100,000. So even though there's water nearby, based on the current bylaws, I have to go 350 feet for $75,000 to $100,000. That cost gets added on, and I got to borrow against it. So in terms of building this stuff and getting this to work, it's the support from the town. So I have a water department meeting August 8th. The support from people like you could help me with some type of variance where I don't spend $75,000 to bring a water main across the street. So the process is tough, the borrowing is tough, but with the support of you guys, we're going to deliver 10 units, hopefully with water, in April. And then we're going to try to do a bunch more. So I'm here to basically thank you guys, the selectmen, historic, zoning, planning, for their support, and I want to give back. So I've reached out to the Affordable Housing Trust, where if they want to work with me to help finance the second building, I'm willing to play ball with you guys and have all 10 hit the SHI list.
The only thing is, that's just terrific. And this is where the housing trust can be really helpful. Providing some of that gap financing, maybe some pre-development financing, and then there's a local initiative friendly for ED. And when you are looking at doing housing guidelines again, these are the kinds of, projects that you're going to identify, the characteristics that you want to support. Terrific. And I know it's hard.
So this Sills Walls is going to be probably the best looking building in Harwich, except maybe it Works Academy, beautiful. And this is a 50 by 26 foot building, so it's an average size. There's going to be 7 units in it. Every single neighborhood, when this is done, would want to see this building in the neighborhood. So we can do it. It's just the support from the town, somewhat cheap land, and then you'll be able to get utilities to the site, electricity, and that kind of stuff.
To follow up on John's point, what we've learned from Karen statistically, when you really dig into the data, is Harwich needs it all. I appreciate your point about some of our bigger scale projects, the work that you're doing. Karen's data, the need, you so eloquently spoke, we need it all.
But the disconnect is the trust is a cap.
Understood.
That's below what he could have benefited.
Understood, but if we're talking about housing overall, as a community, the totality of the community, we need all types of housing.
Let's hear from someone else that has a
And veteran and the director of housing advocacy at the Community Development Partnership. And thank you all for being here and participating in a really spirited debate about something that everyone really cares about and is really central to the vibrancy of our communities. I'm thrilled that the trust is going to go up above what the current cap is. I think it's really important as you delve into that work to be really specific about strategies that are appropriate for affordable housing for people who are really low income are not going to be the same as strategies that are appropriate for attainable housing. They're really two different buckets, and having one committee deal with both. The trap I don't want to see Harwich walk into is that one is sort of fighting the other for money. So it's important to have separate funding streams for each. I love that included in the draft plan is mixed income levels for development as well as homeownership opportunities. As Ella mentioned, I think it's important that we help the community disentangle the idea of homeownership with single-family structures. You could also have a homeownership condo opportunity. Provincetown, through their inclusionary zoning, has created about 7 of those in the last couple of years. So that's one thing. A second thing is that homeownership and attainable housing, there's no subsidy money for that. So they are really challenging to pencil out. So again, you have to have funding. Off the top of my head, I'm embarrassed that I don't know this because it is my purview. What is Harwich doing with its short-term rental money? Sewer? Half and half. Half and half. It's $2.7 million over the last 3 years. So that's a nice chunk of money. And if it helps with housing, it's a problem created by housing, something to consider.
Yeah, it hasn't got more to housing yet. It's
The short-term rental money, half goes to the general fund, 25% to sewers, and 25% to affordable housing.
It's in the stabilization.
Yeah. And those two are stabilization funds.
The trust has gotten no money from the house.
Other comments or questions from anyone who hasn't spoken yet, and if not, we'll go back to you. Yes? No? Okay.
I just want to follow up on his testimony on the West Harwich Schoolhouse. So my prior life was as a city attorney, and I happened to do a lot of the heads up and home closing transactions for the community that I worked for. So I've been involved in that side of the process, and his testimony, what it took for him to get funding is ridiculous. So to me, what goes to the top of the list should be an affordable unit development revolving loan program that you loan it out, it comes back in, and then it's available for somebody else. It never disappears if it's a revolving loan fund. You come up with a reasonable rate that's not 9.5%, which is absurd, and I understand what the rest of the rates are these days, but to me, that goes to the top of the list if I'm looking at a housing production plan.
Anything else? Great inputs. Karen, if you want to sum up and next steps.
Hey, thanks so very much. I see what incredible resources the town has. Challenges too, but a lot of progress is being made. So what I'm going to do is take comments that I've received, and revise draft, and have it on the website, and then we will be going to the planning board, the select board for approvals, and there will be an inclusion, opportunities for more civic engagement so that residents can have, really weigh in on the plan as well. And then we'll make whatever improvements
the state technically has 90 days to review and approve it. They're turning the plans around and they're approved very quickly, within a month. So that's been good news. Anyway, I just want to thank you all for being here. I think it demonstrates that affordable housing in general is a very important issue in this community. And thank you again.
So I just want to make sure that we properly adjourn our meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
John and I, thank you.
So, Mayor Harris, too.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? All in favor? We're done.